Welcome to Finding Your Worth From Within, the podcast where I'm going to be helping you up-level your life, find your true self, and ignite the best version of you. I'm your host, Amasana, your go-to self-worth mentor, facilitating hundreds of women to unlock your self-belief, master your emotions, and take back control of negative thoughts. We're going to be covering everything self-worth for South Asian women, how to ditch your self-doubt, kick other people's judgment to the curb, and learn how to finally use your voice clearly and with confidence. With the practical tools and spiritual teachings that I give you in this podcast, don't be surprised when this magic begins to massively elevate your life. So whether you're going for a walk, driving home, or listening with a cup of coffee, let's get stuck in. Welcome to what I think is going to be my favourite episode. I've known for years now that I'll be talking about this topic, but was never quite sure where and how I would do it. I've actually got butterflies as I'm recording. It's because it's such a personal story that it makes me a little bit nervous, but because of the impact that this week had on me, the story has to be told. So let's get stuck in and join me for the journey of how my dad changed my life forever from an induced coma. For those that don't know, my beloved dad passed away 27th of October, 2021. But it was actually the 19th of October that our life really began to change. It was the beginning of a reality that shocked my family beyond belief. It was the day that we found out Dad was seriously ill in hospital. He had been in India for 6 weeks and was due to come back because after COVID, he was desperate to get back to India. And I actually think he was on the first flight out there, literally the first flight from Birmingham that got to Punjab. He was on it because Dad was the epitome of you can take the man out of Punjab, but not Punjab out the man. His heart honestly beat for his homeland, so it was complete destiny for him that he actually passed away there. So Dad was ill with dengue. We didn't realise this. It was something that they didn't tell us because he was like, he's got medication, he'll get over it. Now, dengue is a disease that you get from a certain mosquito. It's a certain mosquito bite and it's called dengue fever. And like I said, you can get medication for it and you can overcome it. It's treatable, which Dad thought he had done. However, the night before they were flying back, he was complaining to Mom that he couldn't breathe properly, and she was like, right, I'm taking you straight to hospital, let's get you checked out because we're on a plane in the morning, like I need to make sure you're going to be okay. So they took him in, they did observations, and within the space of 12 hours he deteriorated so vastly. In the space of 12 hours they determined that his lungs were collapsing and they needed to put him on a ventilator in an induced coma. In England, we didn't know at the time that it was this bad because Mom was trying to minimise what she could tell us. She wasn't quite sure what was happening herself. It was all very traumatic and all very fast. But my brother had made a decision that he was going to fly out, and my mother-in-law, bless her, encouraged me to go as well. And something in my gut just said, I'm going with him. So we got the flight the next day, and I cannot tell you, over the next 3 weeks, how many times God showed up for us as a family. Somehow, anything that seemed impossible became possible. We ended up stranded at the airport and managed to find a taxi driver through a network of people that had an empty car and was driving back to Punjab. Because get this, he had an empty car because the people he was supposed to be picking up, their plane returned back to Canada mid-flight because of Lord knows what. But it was magic like this that continued to happen to us throughout our time. My sisters managed to get their emergency visas the day we called to say, you need to get here now. My boy travelled on a visa that we're not even sure was valid. We don't even know how she managed to get there. But God had our back. Waheguru had our back. And it was truly our safety net. My two beautiful cousins, neither that live in India, were with us to help us and support us throughout, whilst my sisters and sister-in-law were waiting for their visas to travel. The right people were in the right places at the right time. Anyway, back to Pops. Doctors were treating him for dengue whilst telling us he isn't presenting as a dengue patient. They felt something wasn't right with him. It just didn't quite fit. They had told us because he had an induced coma, he couldn't hear us, but we didn't quite believe that, so carried on when we got there with our banter, taking the mic, and kept the conversation really light-hearted around him. Meanwhile, a friend of mine had reached out as she had heard I was in India for Dad. Sharon was at the time qualifying as a pranic healer. She's now has her pranic healing business, and I'll link her below for anybody that'd like to reach out. But the kind soul that she is was so eager to help me and help Dad in any way that she could through distance healing. A group of them, her and her associates, started to send Dad distance healing on a daily basis. Her and Pavni, a fellow pranic healer, devoted their entire week to sending Dad healing, to which I could never, ever be more grateful for. Sharon and my cousin, also a Reiki practitioner, were encouraging me to feel into Dad's energy. Now, this is before I've done any Reiki, any energy work, before I knew I was able to tune into people's energy. Yes, I knew I was spiritual. I used to have a few dreams and I was quite empathic. But other than that, I hadn't facilitated any energy work myself. So when they were encouraging me, I was like, okay, we'll give it a go, right? We'll see what comes up. We got there. I put my hands over Dad, closed my eyes, and tried to scan him with my hands as best as I could. Now, I didn't really know what I was doing, so I had my eyes closed. I was scanning him with my hands, and all of a sudden I could feel a heat coming from his body, a heat that wasn't coming from the rest of his body. To make sure I wasn't crazy, I got my brother to watch, and I was like, okay, this is where I can feel the heat. Where is this? And I opened my eyes, and it was over his kidneys. One kidney more than the other. Now, much to my surprise, later that day, the doctor came back and told us Dad's left kidney was highly infected. Yeah, that's the kidney I felt the most heat from. Once they found this, it became apparent that we weren't dealing with dengue at all. It was actually sepsis. He had a serious infection in his kidney that had spread to his lungs and other areas of his body. In this moment, it was truly like, fuck. One day in the week, my cousin decided it'd be a really good idea for me to have a Reiki session from her just to keep myself clear, and it would be helpful for me. So as we did this and as we got into it, the most surreal thing happened in the world. During the session, I was aware that somehow, unintentionally, I was directing the Reiki and the energy that she was facilitating for me to Dad. Now, I still to this day don't know how I did it, don't know what I did. I don't even think it was me doing it. But all I knew was that I could see Dad's body and I could see his feet, and I knew that this energy that she was giving me, the Reiki that she was providing for me, was being redirected to Dad. So you can imagine when I came out of it, I was like, oh my God, you don't know what just happened. And she was like, yeah, I do. I saw it too. I saw him. I saw his body. Like, how did we just see the same thing? So the next morning, you can imagine how surprised we were to see that Dad's bed sores had literally gone. The blisters that were there the day before were not there in the morning. This got me really excited because I was like, it gave me hope. I was like, could we fix him? Can we do this? There's enough of us working on him. There's a whole group of people sending him energy from England. Me and her were there. Me and my cousin were there. Like, could we do this? Could we really fix him? Pavni had been teaching me how to send Dad energy so that I could help during the day. And the funny thing was, she would be giving me updates on Dad's health from England by tuning into him before the doctors were actually giving me the updates in Punjab. There was one day of hope that I specifically remember, and it was in between where doctors reported his infection levels were lower, he was producing more urine, and they started to talk of a care plan. They'd reduced his meds and were trying to get him awake. Now, he might not have been awake, but he did move his cheek and his lip, and dialysis was going well. So this was just literally an entire day of hope for us. Now, if there's anything we do well as a family, it's we work well in crisis. The kids joke that the five of us are like a SWAT team. So plans had begun. They were talking of a care plan, and we were talking of how we were going to manage this over the next few months. If I head back home, my other sister can come for a bit. My brother can swap out with my sister-in-law. We can take it in turns and all support Mom turn by turn, because the recovery was going to be long, but it's okay, right? Now, the downside of this was Dad would have had to have an oxygen tank. And in hindsight, these plans and care plan were just selfish. These cancer plans and care plan were perfect for us, but not perfect for him. Because Dad's motto in life was always that when I die, I want to die like that. He was like, I don't want to be old. I don't want to be in a care home or having to be looked after, or I don't want any of that. He literally used to say, I want to die like that. So he would have had to carry an oxygen tank around with him. My God, we would have known about it. It would have been his idea of hell. Anyway, as the week went on, I kept trying to connect through meditation. And yes, I did. There were times where I could feel he was scared. There was times when I could encourage my siblings to connect. And there was times when I was trying to send him the most love I could, because we wanted him surrounded with love and faith and were adamant that he wasn't going to have fear around him at all. But for me at this time, remember, I wasn't into energy work. I didn't know anything. So being able to connect through meditation was huge. I could feel my dad, and he was in an induced coma. I could connect with him and he wasn't even conscious. Then came Sunday. The doctors weren't on their usual duties and I had somewhere else to go for a few hours. So I was nervous and on edge, and I don't know how many times I must have called my poor brother just to check in, just to make sure any updates, but something didn't seem right. I'd seen Dad in the morning and his temperature was back and you could see that he was sweating. And yes, the doctors confirmed later that day that it was a secondary wave of sepsis. My thought was, it's okay, we'll get through it. Miracles happen all the time. Dad's a good person, he's charitable, he has a big heart, he'll pull through. Day after day, they informed us that they were changing the antibiotics because they weren't working, so they needed to choose the next one. They needed to try the higher dose. They needed to try a new version. But it's okay, because I had faith. It didn't matter, because whichever set of antibiotics were meant to work were going to work. But I knew and I was sure that something was going to work, right? We're good people. Wahiguru's on our side. We're going to make it through. My brother, on the other hand, was a little bit more realistic, and he used to watch me every day with my Delulu story, riding this roller coaster of emotions that I now know was actually probably a mix of everybody else's emotions, because like I said, at the time I was unaware that I could feel other people's energies and emotions. I remember tuning into meditation to try and connect with Dad one night, and through that I saw him lying in the hospital bed so peacefully. It was all white though that night. The sheets on him were white. He was dressed in white. Previous times there'd been a lot of blue in my visions, but it was so calm. There was so much light around him. I text my hubby saying, he seems so peaceful, a bit too peaceful. The next day, the doctor informed us that every type of antibiotic that they had tried hasn't worked. Sepsis has spread all over, and the only thing that they have to give him is something that they were calling a silver bullet. It was the only antibiotic that they could give him and the only chance of him surviving. But it was so strong that they could actually only give it him for a certain amount of time. Once again, that Delulu voice in me said, miracles can happen, right? But this time, even I couldn't deny how small and low that voice of faith had got. After the peace and calm I had felt from the night before, and after the doctors telling us that all that was left was a silver bullet, my faith was wavering. Even the dialysis wasn't working this day. His blood pressure was too low. But we had to try, right? Surely there was something that we could do. So I sat in the waiting room once again, trying to send Dad energy. Each time I sent him energy like Pavni had taught me, it seemed to be blocked out. It seemed to just cut out, and I couldn't understand. So once again, I set my intention to send him this healing energy. And once again, it just cut out. And then out of nowhere, I physically felt the weight on my lungs. I physically felt pressure. The only way I can describe it is it felt like my lungs were just closing inwards. The pressure on them, the pain. My face had drained, had turned yellow, and I was finding it difficult to breathe. Never have I had such a physical experience from connecting to someone else's energy. But instantly I knew that it was Dad I was feeling, and it was his way of saying, stop it, let me go. And the minute I felt this overwhelming feeling, I knew we had to let him go. After one of the hardest conversations we've ever had as siblings, we knew that we had to stop holding on to Dad energetically and medically. He had given us so much in his lifetime, and it was now his time. It was his time to pass just how he wanted. It was his time to pass where he wanted, in his beautiful Punjab. The next morning when we got to hospital, Dad's BP was so low that his feet were blue. Me and my brother looked at each other. How do we tell Mum? How do we tell Mum that he's dying? When we finally found the words and the courage to have the conversation, she replied, I know, but I didn't know how to tell you guys. The days after Dad's passing were the strangest days. As friends and family travelled over to India for his funeral, we could feel him with us. Not just with us, but it felt like an indescribable strength inside of me, like he was a part of me. Nothing else mattered, and it felt like I didn't even need anyone else. Now, my dad was a man of charity. He loved to give, but little did we know he would gift us all in his journey of his passing. In Dad's passing, I found an ability that I never knew existed. He showed me what I was made of. He showed me the power of energy. If I tapped into my true self, what I could achieve. This 1 week was the biggest catalyst to understanding how intuitive I am and how much I can tune into other people's energy. It was from this experience onwards that I trained in different modalities to bring you the intuitive coaching, energy clearings and healings that I facilitate today. If anything showed me the power of good energy, it was everyone's love, well wishes and prayers. I can't tell you how many people messaged me that week, messaged my siblings, my husband, my family, my in-laws. The love for us and Dad was so real. We were beyond grateful for prayers and hadassa that everyone did. And to this day, I truly believe that it was that energy that kept him alive that week. Because we didn't actually know, but the day that he got to hospital, the day he was admitted, the doctor had said, it's 50-50 and we don't know if he'll make it. But my biggest lesson from Dad's passing was that throughout the whole time, I had faith in him recovering. I believed it would happen because I believed it was the right thing. But actually, that was the wrong belief to have. What I should have had was, I should have had faith in that what was meant for him was meant to be. Thank you for listening and coming on that journey with me. Remember, I would love to hear your feedback, and if you could rate and review the podcast, it would mean the world to me. But for now, live for the moment, love and laugh, surrender to divine, and trust that what is meant for you is coming your way. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Finding Your Worth from Within. If today's message resonated with you, it would mean the world to me if you could follow, rate and leave a review. Sharing the podcast with someone that you feel may benefit is the best way to help it grow and spread this important message. To stay connected between episodes, come hang out with me on Instagram @Mentoring. Can't wait to see you there.